Hello, friends, and welcome to Worldbuild with us, the podcast where we create fantastical worlds with help from you, our listeners. My name is Rob Hilferty, and I'm here with my co-hosts Daniel Quinn and Courtney Staples. On today's episode, we finish up what's been kind of a collaborative thing, but mostly spearheaded by Commissar Whiskers. As a reminder, this is part 2 of a 2-part series, so I would strongly urge you to go back a previous episode if this is your first experience with us, because you'd probably be confused otherwise. There's a whole lot of really cool stuff in that episode, and a big thank you to our patron, Commissar Whiskers, for this prompt. And remember that if you want us to build your world, you can always go to our website, worldbuildwithus.com, where you can click the link, follow the instructions, and within a reasonable amount of time, we'll be building your world. If you want to follow us on social media, you can go ahead and do that over on Twitter at Let's Worldbuild. I mean, we'd be privileged and honored if we could be one of your 600 views that day. But anyway, we're also on Discord. If you want to come chat with us more directly, Discord's definitely the place to do it, where we talk about world building and a whole bunch of other random nonsense, really whatever you want. Just come on over there with a link for that in the description. And of course, if you're feeling particularly generous, or if you want access to those sweet patron-only episodes, or if you want 2 episodes instead of 1 for your prompts, you can always go and give us money over on Patreon. We are always incredibly grateful whenever you do that. We've also got our YouTube channel, which is up and running, which basically is another means for you to interact and listen to the podcast. Also, if you're hearing this on YouTube, hey, what's up? Glad that the algorithm shoved us into your life. So thank you for clicking on that. Make sure you do all the YouTube stuff as well while you're there. Hey, why not? Anyway, with all that out of the way, let's dive right back into our prompt. And the last time we left off, we had a twist, and the twist was there's an unreliable protagonist / main character. So Daniel, why don't you get us started today? What direction did you want to take this unreliable protagonist / main character?
I had a couple of thoughts. On the one hand, we had framed the progenitors as sort of a salvation for these people, and we'd framed the snake as being quite terrifying. So I thought perhaps either the snake is not quite what it's been made out to seem that it is, or and or with the slash between, the progenitor that they are seeking out, the last remaining one, or the progenitors in general, are in fact bad, and they're perhaps worse than the gods.
Ooh.
Oh my.
Interesting.
That is certainly not what I was anticipating there either. Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that we're both interested in the world serpent thing there, because I think I was gonna say, Courtney, is yours also world worm related?
It's related, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Well, what do you got for us there, Courtney?
So last time we had established that we'd be following, or partly following, at least a group of researchers on a spaceship trying to study the serpent and follow it around, and that serpent leaves all sorts of these reality warping, physics changing craziness in its wake. And my thought was that the exposure to that changes you mentally over time. Like your perception of time shifts. You start to gain a new understanding or insight of the universe that can only be attained by experiencing it directly. Kind of like in the same vein as the movie Arrival, or the short story it's based on, Story of Your Life, where the main character is a linguist who translates an alien language, and because of how they communicate, her own sense of time shifts as she gets into it.
Yeah, that sounds fun. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
So mine was admittedly a bit more broad in terms of what I was interested in kind of talking about. I really just wanted something to do with the worm isn't exactly what it's been told it is, if that makes sense. Yes, I mean, the fact that there's reality warping stuff around it, I think is kind of telling. You know what I mean? I think that the narrative has suitably warped around the worm itself as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like you guys are saying something similar, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I agree with that completely.
Yeah.
So
does that mean the zealots are kind of right?
I mean, maybe. I mean, it also sounds like the kind of brain rot that Courtney, or brain expansion that Courtney is
depending on your point of view.
yeah, exactly. That Courtney is kind of hinting at here is also like perhaps a good reason as to why the story has been warped from my tenet as well. You know, like, oh, it's not that, you know, like this thing is as it says. It's actually just like as soon as you perceive the world worm, your brain can't really comprehend it. And so it's like, this is my explanation of what happened, you know? And so that's what people walk away from, is this idea like, I know what happened, except you don't, because your brain was like, I can't handle that. I literally cannot stand looking or understanding what I just looked at.
So it would seem these zealots might be right for the wrong reasons.
Maybe. I mean, they're also trying to get it to eat more, so it's kind of expanding its power. So I don't know if they're quite in the right there.
Maybe not with their motivation, but perhaps what they say, some of the things they say about the transcendental experience isn't necessarily wrong.
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, those zealots are fucked up, y'all. I'm just saying, like, nah. I'm still definitely of the opinion that we're in a TI-86 calculator and we're playing Snake, and this is exactly what's going on. We've just created a micro narrative for the things that are going on within it, but you know, that's fine.
If we had rolled that this was an isekai, then that would have been the
easy. Yeah, exactly. Like, this is the gritty okay, remember when gritty reboots were a thing?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is the gritty reboot of Snake. Like, this is like, oh man, we've what have we earned the rights to? Oh, the game Snake? All right, cool, no problem. You know. Anyway, Daniel, if you don't mind, let's go ahead and rewind a little bit and talk about evil progenitors for a little moment, shall we?
It makes you think of the engineers from Alien, you know?
Yeah.
You had mentioned that. Yeah. You like that movie too much, I think.
I like that movie. I like it because it reminds me, it's got like these Lovecraftian vibes to it, like parts of it.
Are you talking about Prometheus specifically?
Yeah, Prometheus.
Yeah. I think we had this conversation offline, but I think that was this on the podcast?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Oh man, see, this is what happens when I see you guys in the meat space and just like, oh, this is weird. I can't remember what stories get told. Anyway, no, it's dumb. That those people are dumb, and
the characters.
The characters, yes,
exactly. They behave like morons.
Yeah. That's really the big issue that I have with that thing in general.
Yeah.
So you know. Yeah,
I think I like the theology. I like the theology, the attempt to explain some of the things in Alien that obviously weren't thought out initially, and that's what I'm interested in. Is like, it makes you ask more questions, which I think is always a cool move when you've introduced something that answers some question, but then it's like there's a lot more questions raised. So it makes you want to know more about the alien world. Like, how does this work? You know? Yeah,
especially in a series where, you know, the original movie is all about like uncovering what this alien thing is, right? And then by, you know, like Resurrection, you know exactly what a xenomorph does and is and how it works. And so like by trying to create a little bit more mystery surrounding the xenomorph and stuff like that, I think is a smart move overall. Sure.
Yeah.
But this isn't a film review podcast. But what I'm pointing at though, is something that I think is we can take advantage of here, which is like, okay, what was so familiar is now unfamiliar and therefore scary and weird, and like, you know, what are we questioning again, right? So let's go ahead and talk about the fact that these progenitor races, the things that people, so let's go with the evil progenitor thing here, right? Our group of researchers that we've kind of created in the last episode, we've pointed to them and they're like, oh, we've got to find the progenitor races. They're our saviors. They're the only way that we can stop this oncoming reality warping, reality storm of a Jormungandr. So, I mean, in a sense, right? They're trying to meet the things that created the, oh, God, I'm rambling so much, but like, they're trying to find a war criminal. They're trying to find the exact person who created this thing is remorseless when it comes to that type of thing.
I like that, although what I was saying about the progenitors isn't just that one of them is bad, that they're all actually pretty bad. Like, we have the wrong idea of their intentions overall.
Okay.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
I wonder if because as one of the tenets in the prompt implied, that this was like a cycle that kept going and going and going. And the progenitors, it seemed, wanted to stop that cycle. And in doing so, they created this serpent and killed the gods. And maybe their intent was literally to end the universe by doing that. Like they knew that this would happen. They knew that this cosmic serpent would keep eating everything. And they just wanted it to fully end.
Yeah.
In that case, the war criminal might actually, maybe he's doing something that is not exactly what they say he was doing. Like, so they're pinning the blame on him, but maybe he was actually working against them in some way.
Oh, so this is the one good one, basically.
Yeah,
right?
maybe.
Yeah.
Or like maybe not. Maybe, I mean, we could even say like perhaps he had selfish intentions, but it's to the benefit of the protagonists, you know?
Yeah. Oh, maybe it's like the protagonists see him initially as like the one who designed the whole thing, like the war criminal behind it, but in actuality, like yes, he was maybe the lead engineer on this or whatever, but he was actually sabotaging the project, and that's why the universe hasn't already ended. Like it was supposed to be a much faster thing. Like maybe the snake was supposed to be even larger and faster moving, but now it's smaller. I mean, it's still fucking enormous, like incomprehensibly large, but it's allowed time for these life forms to develop more and potentially figure out a way to stop it.
Right. Yeah. And maybe the rift that kind of got created in the past was this idea that like, oh, this guy created a failsafe, right? Like actively sabotaged the creation of the world serpent, but also put in a failsafe. So there's like this idea that this guy, this progenitor, is sitting there like, look, I know that I can't stop this. I know that it won't stop, but I can slow it down and maybe somebody else can in future generations, right?
And that's why he went to sleep, maybe, so he could be found in the future.
Right.
Yeah.
I think I had the idea of like they created a tomb for themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's awfully fitting now, especially if you want to turn it into an RPG, like exploring the tomb and getting to the center to uncover like the secret, only to find out that the person that you're looking for is still alive, like is kind of a fun little D&D trope almost. You know?
And maybe like, you know, part of his goal, like he doesn't care about these humans, but part of his goal is to, I don't know, maybe he originally wanted to destroy the snake and they thought that the only way they could succeed is by making it bigger and destroying the universe. Like maybe he's leading them to what he thinks will work, but it's actually disastrous for all of them, you know?
What do you mean by that?
So I can imagine, let's say we had different ideas about what the snake is doing, but in the end, it seems the progenitors are trying to make it as large as possible to destroy the universe to get rid of the gods, right? So maybe the snake isn't really their design fully. But my point would be like, if whatever he's doing is opposed to that, so perhaps like he had a goal of blowing the snake itself up, and that would end the war with the gods too. And so like if that's the case, then waking him up, he's probably wants to finish the job now that it's out there, and that could be disastrous for all of them. If you blow the snake up, maybe that causes catastrophic damage throughout the universe. Who knows? I don't know.
That could release all of the energy that it's been building up inside by eating all of this god stuff.
And then, of course, because we have this misunderstanding of the progenitors themselves, like this progenitor wakes up, and they're effectively like, hey, you know, nothing matters except the destruction or the stopping of this world serpent. So like they're doing just the absolute most vile, heinous, evil shit in the kind of Machiavellian, like, look, we got to solve this problem. We got to solve this problem because it literally means the universe, you know.
And he has different ethics, right? Like as an alien, you know.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's also this idea that this kind of progenitor is also like the head of some kind of space empire that's secretly, but I feel like that's kind of a little bit more hacky than what we're kind of going for right now.
I could see him being like, once he's woken up, he probably is smart enough to realize he needs resources and help to finish the job.
Yeah.
So he probably aligns with the humans and teaches them, like, here's how you would fight the snakes, like remnants, or here's how you fight the people who are empowered by the god, because he understands all that, right? And he could probably be a very cunning, think like Grand Admiral Thrawn, like a very cunning, like strategy sort of person, more so than someone with powers. But it's like when the moment arises that he needs to get what he wants, he, like you said, he's completely amoral, you know, like he has no understanding of our morals, nor does he care. He's just emulating them to carry us along to get to his goal, you know?
Right. I suppose that's where my question turns to, like, why doesn't this progenitor just immediately turn to subjugation then?
I don't think he's powerful enough. I think that they might just be regular beings. Like they're not like angelic or magical. They just are regular. They're smart. That must be what it is.
Okay. Because in my mind, when I think progenitor race, I think of something that is like inherently more powerful or more capable of like the kind of child races that came after it. You know what I mean?
I could see that being a knowledge-based thing. Like imagine if we woke up, like 500 years ago, the things we could tell people how things work or how to make them work, they'd be like, what the hell, you're a magician, you know?
Mm-hmm. Oh, so it's that kind of level where it's just like, look, I just know a lot about this particular thing, that kind of thing.
Or even physics we don't understand. Like they might know stuff.
Right.
So like they're like, okay, I know how to alter this drive so we can go faster than light. Here's what I need. And they're like, what?
Oh, wait, that's actually really cool because then you kind of turn to this figure and you're like, wait, they just made my ship 10 times faster, like way more powerful with a couple of things. So you're like, oh, I like this thing. I like this person. And then immediately you're like, oh shit. Oh no.
Yeah, like you give him control of that military fleet. He knows how to make them all work in unison.
We are in way over our heads now. What have we done? Oh no. Yeah, that's fun. That's a fun little element to it, though. I like that. Oh man. Okay. Cool. So I feel like, have we reconciled the twist well enough? Have we twisted it and untwisted it and then twisted it back again?
I think so. I mean, the serpent itself is kind of a question mark now, given that we might not necessarily like fully understand what it is or what it was meant to be.
True. Very true. Yeah. I'm frankly, I'm at the point where I'm like cool with kind of leaving it as is right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, same. Agreed.
So like kind of discovering what it is later throughout the episode.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Speaking of, we have factions. So what are our factions? Courtney, kick us off. What did we bring in for your progenitor / world / zealous? What do we go? We have so many options to go with here. What did you bring us, Courtney?
So many options, yeah. Building on the idea of unreliable narrators, I wanted a faction of people who are not just cosmonauts, but also psychonauts who seek out these reality warping experiences and like purposefully expose themselves to them as much as possible in an effort to maybe have that transcendental experience that you mentioned, or to like they believe that they can ascend in some way. And I honestly didn't build these out in any sort of formal way, but I will say that at least one of the researchers on that ship is secretly one of these people.
Nice. Yeah.
Ooh. So they're not necessarily, I suggest that they're not necessarily liked by everybody. They're secretly one of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be like a conflict of interest if other people were to find out, like, wait, you're only here to just like get really high off of God bits. Like, we don't want that.
And they're like, no, of course not.
Yeah.
I'm a serious person and a
totally
serious
scientist here. Yeah. This was also kind of a callback to our Cillian Murphy mention last episode. Because in the movie Sunshine, which is about a team of people sent to restart the sun after it dies, it's kind of a weird thing. Didn't end up enjoying it all that much, but there is this thing that some of the crew members do where it's like it seems like a exposure to that level of the sun or that amount of radiation is almost like a tempting addictive sort of thing for some of them.
And here I was thinking you were going to go with an Inception reference, but
no.
All right, fair enough. That's good. All right, well that's interesting. So I like the idea that this is definitely, like they're pursuant of, this kind of experience, this kind of ascendant experience, right? What can we do to make them, I don't know, because in my mind, I'm thinking about like, we've definitely done something like this before. And I want to say we've even done it kind of recently with the kind of post-apocalyptic like Psyker type situation. You know what I'm talking about? Where they mined out the moon. What series was that called?
Oh, we had a lot of moons lately.
Yeah, we have.
You mean the Moon of a Thousand Demons one?
Yeah. Wait. Yeah. Maybe. No, this is the one. See, you're right, Daniel. We have had too many moons lately.
Land of a Thousand Extremes. That was when they mined out the moon and the planet became
There
tidally
we
locked.
go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. That's the one I was thinking of, where it's just like, okay, you had that kind of similar idea. So how are we making this like, oh, wait a minute. Are you trying to tie this into like Event Horizon at all?
Could potentially. I did actually see that
I
recently.
know,
Yeah.
that's why I bring it up. You saw it recently.
Yeah.
What did you think of it?
I did like it.
Good.
I wasn't expecting to as much as I did, given that a lot of people say that it's very dated or kind of cheesy. And well, I did, notice certain cheesy or dated
Mhm.
parts. I thought it overall aged well, given that it's like a 90s
Mhm.
sci-fi horror, and it
Sure.
could have been a lot worse for what it was. And I liked the descent into madness and like how completely fucked up everything got.
I love when Lawrence Fishburne is like, "We're leaving," as soon as he realizes what's going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree. It's a good movie. I wouldn't go
Mhm.
so far as to call it like a great or
Yeah.
like a masterpiece or
It's
anything
like
like that.
enjoyable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's no 1999's The Mummy starring
Yes.
Brendan Fraser, of course, but
Of course. Nothing can compare.
no. I feel like it's been too long since we've mentioned that. But
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway, get a little
But
sidetracked.
yes,
So how
anyway.
what I'm trying to get at here,
Yeah.
what can we do to make this transcendental, like drug tripping kind of faction?
Mhm.
What kind of flavor? Like, because I feel like we just need a little bit of spice. We just need like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
missing like a pinch of something, and I want to kind of like add that flavor in as best we can. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We could ask questions about so for example, are they individuals who have this inclination, and so the term has been developed to describe people who want to do this secretly, or are they like an actual organized entity, that seeks this out as a group?
Yeah. I had kind of pictured them as very loosely organized, if at all. So
Mhm.
like not really a formal network or anything, but probably more like hobbyists in a way.
Could they maybe be organized by like, the equivalent of a forum or a, underground chat, like interstellar sort of thing? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like that idea. Like they're
Uh-huh.
basically
Mhm.
amateur hobbyists, like hunkering down on
Yeah.
some hacking forum or something.
Yeah. So it's, I can imagine like the scientists being in their lab and they're like secretly chatting with the group. It's like, oh, we're really
Oh,
close,
Yeah.
like that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
maybe we can add a little bit of curiosity to them. Like it's kind of like drug forums that are like, hey, I don't know how psychedelics work, and then like
Mhm.
it's kind of like they're kind of writing down their
Mhm.
experiences and like comparing
Yeah.
notes and being like, oh, what
Yeah.
happened when you did this? It's like there's like a little bit of science to it, and there's also a little bit
Mhm.
of like reckless kind of like we're testing this stuff out on ourselves, kind of thing as
It's
well.
very psychonaut. It's very journalistic.
Yeah.
Journalistic
Yeah.
in the sense of like writing journals.
Yes.
Mhm. Yeah, I do
Yeah.
like that.
But that kind of like brings them together, and that's pretty fun. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like you brought up Event Horizon, and I didn't have that sort of negative result in mind, but I could
Mm,
see it leading to very unexpected things in the long run. This
mm,
frequent exposure to God stuff, and like I know in the prompt or one of the tenets talked about how maybe that exposure is how like magic exists. So maybe there's something there where you gain powers that you don't entirely understand how to control or what to do with them.
mhm. Oh, so would it be like you're pulling stuff from the psychic plane into the real world, essentially?
Ooh, could be that, yeah, or some other plane that you don't really know what it is. Like if it's
Yeah.
Event Horizon, then it could go to very dark places.
I mean, we
Yeah.
established that the powers that the gods have to do with their having a different physics. So I
Mhm.
could imagine if
Yes.
that's like transmissible, that the
Oh,
reality
yeah.
bubbles that we called,
Mhm.
Yeah.
perhaps the exposure gives these people their own like very minimal sense of a reality that they can't control. And that's
Yeah.
why things get progressively weirder for them because their localized physics start to change. And it could also impact
Mm.
people around them in ways they don't understand.
I like that, yeah, and, like, maybe they're trying to figure out how to control it, but it's since
Hmm.
it's this, like, literal god stuff, like, how do you even wrap your head around how that works?
It's like imagine if you were high and the things you're seeing actually are happening and people
Yeah.
in your vicinity could see those things, which is like very much like Event
Mm.
Horizon.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's very interesting because I feel like my faction and your faction are gonna have like this weird kind of push-pull, like
Mhm.
antagonism almost, because
Mhm.
I've been listening to a podcast series on the Manhattan Project recently. And I've been really utterly fascinated with kind of like the logistical elements of creating, like this cutting edge, bleeding edge technology for the time and how it was weaponized. And then some of the descriptions of, the nuclear bombs being used in Hiroshima and Nagasaki are like just some of the most bone chilling, like horrifying things that you can imagine. What I'm fascinated by and where my faction kind of kicks in is that I wanted some kind of governmental organization that is exploring the kind of, because if you go towards the parts of the dead gods, right, it fucks our shit up real bad because it fucks with the physics. And like, sure, you could probably utilize those dead god parts for like energy, like infinite energy. But much like we kind of approached atomic energy, just like how can we weaponize it? This is what's going on here. So I have this like group of researchers and like very boring government types who are currently trying to figure out how to best weaponize God energy as best as they possibly can. And yeah, based on our conversation that we're having, I feel like your group is certainly against mine. Like mine is a little bit more bureaucratic and perhaps a little bit more fascistic as well. I didn't really start it that way, but I'm looking at it like as a healthy kind of contrast between your hobbyists and mine are like, like it's got a little bit of an Indiana Jones versus Belloc vibe a little bit, you know what I mean?
Yeah, or I could see it as like your group almost doing like an MK Ultra thing with my hobbyists.
Oh
That's what I was asking.
Infiltrating and trying to like get those people to study them.
Are they government types? Like, are they?
Yes,
because I feel like we haven't really had an understanding of how the intergalactic structure of this world is. So that would be nice to have some sort of government, even though seems like a government bureau inside of whatever their larger apparatus is.
Yeah. It's a fascinating kind of situation to see, like, okay, we've given this one person, I think his name's General Greaves or something like that, but he basically was given an unlimited budget and was told to like make nuclear stuff happen. And he was incredibly good at his job in terms of logistics and like making like projects happen. And it's hypothesized that like without him, we would probably have nuclear bombs years after we actually had them developed because he was actually just that efficient at organizing.
He's a great project manager. The world's greatest project manager.
Like actually though, like that's the kind of funny thing about it is that he was actually just really good at project management. And like Oppenheimer got the job because of him. Like no one wanted a theoretical physicist because he's theoretical. We want practical. And then this general was like, nah, this is it. We want this person because he knows what he's doing. But it's like that's the kind of like very bland and boring type of like person and organization that I want, because that to me is like way scarier. Like imagine that, Courtney, you're one of your psyker people are just like enjoying this trip, like experiencing altered reality. And then a man in a black suit or a man in like a featureless like hazmat suit like basically yanks them out of that. Like it's a bad trip because you made it a bad trip, and it's because that government organization is there like being like, what the fuck are you doing in psyker space, man? Get out of here.
I have a question. So when we think about the structure of the various planets or systems in this, it makes me think then that the larger governing body, and I'm sure there's many different worlds that have different governments, of course, but maybe like a federation of some kind, makes me think it's less of a, like an empire or like something that's more, I don't know, backwards in our history and some sort of government that's in the future of what we're imagining, like of present day.
Sure.
Only because the threat of the snake eating worlds would mean the response to that is that, we don't necessarily want that other than the Zeldas places. So I'm guessing that the large government that's in charge is not some kind of like evil empire. I'm thinking it's more of a normal sort of coalition of planets.
I mean, I certainly wouldn't call it inherently evil, but I think it's capable of great evil in the way that any kind of bureaucratic edifice, any kind of large organization is capable of great evil, just because it's like they have a shared goal and that goal is going to, get done. And great things have been done in the name of good intentions, you know, or
Well, I mean, I guess the distinction I want to make is that they're not like a bloodthirsty empire
Yeah.
looking to conquer places. They're more
Yeah,
like a normal
okay.
nation state, you know?
Yeah, no, this isn't
Yeah,
like
yeah.
blood for the blood god. This is not like we're
Right.
plucking your brains out of cyberspace because we want to feast on them. It's more like, guys, I'm gonna go home and have a nice date with my wife tonight. And oh, by the
Mhm.
way, I yanked a guy at a cyberspace, like just so you
Right.
know, I'm keeping the cosmos safe. You know, like that.
It
kind of-
allows like your thing to exist in the context. Like I couldn't
Yeah.
imagine a MK Ultra organization existing in a bloodthirsty war empire. I mean, sure,
Right.
it would, but it wouldn't be the same mood as an MK Ultra. You know, like
Right.
a
Right.
orderly bureaucratic government, you know, instrument. You know.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I get you. That's certainly what I'm interested in exploring here is the kind of like banal aspects of these kind of great events and kind of great because that's always fascinated me. Let's be real, like banal things happening, the very boring, the very mundane things. That to me, I don't know why is so fascinating in fantastical situations.
No, I was gonna say that I like that we've just been focusing on like boring people so far. Like we got like hobbyist drug people, we've got boring bureaucrats, and like yeah, there's a cult, but they're also just
Yeah.
kind of flying around. They're not really like doing anything too crazy
Yeah.
in terms of like physically what they're doing.
I can't wait until Daniel hits us with Space McCool, Space Bounty Hunter, where he's got like a pompadour and he's like shooting double guns and stuff like that. So, Daniel, why don't you hit us? What have you focused on for your faction this
I
time?
was so glad you gave me that layup because I was about to say until I fuck it all up.
Perfect.
This is our lovely boring universe. So actually the existence of a more standard government, right? Even though it's got like shady bureaus inside of it, um, gives space for this. So I was thinking of I want to add a kind of galactic police who are fundamentally good, just so that we can have something contrary to reality. Fundamentally good galactic police. I'm thinking Green Lantern style, in that these
Okay.
police officers have been given like a hunk of God stuff or whatever as like some instrument to wear. And therefore it gives them, you know, the equivalent of like superhero-ish powers in order to carry out like the whims of their government. But the key is I want them to be fundamentally good. Even if they're roped into doing bad things, the individual police have a code of ethics that they actually follow.
Okay. Can they be slowly deteriorating because of the God stuff that they wield?
If it doesn't turn them evil, yes.
That's fine. I'm just saying that like they're wielding God stuff as though it were like a weapon. Like, let's look at that and be like, we've established that this God stuff is very, very bad for us. Right.
Like it gives them reality warping abilities, but I feel like perhaps if we wanted to deteriorate, maybe like the more they use it, the more that fragment they have will go away. And it's also dangerous to overuse it, perhaps, like in their duties. So they're very like reserved about how they use their powers.
Oh,
so I'm
that's
not
fun.
picturing like, you know, I'm not picturing Phoenix, right? I'm picturing more like, you know, he might operate on the ground and he might have a few enhanced abilities that are the result of reality warping rather than flying around and shooting fireballs, you know?
Yeah, no, I like the idea that it's like, oh, they're like rolling their eyes like, fuck, okay, I guess I have to use this reality warping power now. Shit has gotten serious. Okay, let's break it out. You know, like using it as a last resort is kind of fun, I think. Yeah.
That way we can keep them in line with the humanity of the others.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like an implant that they can use, kind of like a stim pack type thing, or like a pill that they take, and it's very like, again, very like bureaucratic and banal. It's like gotta do this, I guess, for this mission.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not going to get into anime, Daniel. I'm sorry, but there's a really great character in an anime called Jujutsu Kaisen who like slays demons and stuff, but he's also a salaryman, and so his like limiter, his power limiter, gets broken as soon as 5 o'clock turns around because then it turns into overtime. Right. so like the whole gimmick is like he becomes way more powerful when he's off the clock and when he's like forced to like charge them more.
Is it because it's overtime pay, basically?
Exactly. Yeah, it's overtime pay. Exactly. So like I love that idea of like, okay, like I'm turning on the clock and this clock is going to give me like a certain amount of power or something like that. That's what I wanted to get at. I didn't want to go into a little diatribe, but still, I think that'd be kind of fun.
Yeah. One thing that I like with the direction that we've been going to is like, and Rob, you talked about like the sort of boring researchy direction, but there's also like the ends justify the means direction,
Oh yeah.
because that seems to be the case with this progenitor guy who knows what he's willing to do to stop the thing that he created, and definitely the case with your government agency.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the interesting rub, right? Because we've got this incredibly fantastical setting. And to me, one of the most interesting things about it is exploring it through the lens of something that is really uninteresting and like explicitly boring. But like, it's also one of those things where it's like, holy shit, man, we're exploring like reality warping, reality altering like phenomena, but we're doing it through the lens with a guy who has like a really boring haircut and glasses. Like that to me is so fun and so interesting. Like it's kind of like the Psychonauts game where it's like, oh, the boy ran away he goes to a psychic summer camp. Like, how do you make psychic powers boring? You put it in a summer camp where it's like, oh yeah, this is average. This is no problem, right? And that I think is kind of the appeal to me when we're talking about this type of thing, where it feels grounded. We're talking about stuff that is so out of control and wild and stuff like that, but it's like it feels grounded because there's like a little bit of boringness to it. And I think that it itself is not boring, but it's grounded in the boring, which I find really appealing personally.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we've got our factions, we've reconciled the twist. We've basically been building towards like a main story quest, I think. But I'm interested if we could kind of keep it away from like cosmic serpent type situation. And Daniel, frankly, I think that we should kind of talk about your cops a little bit more because they're inherently good and they wield this stuff. Like, do you have anything else that you want to talk about? Like anything else that you want to characterize them with, or?
I could see, a good cop, perhaps, and maybe some of the other ones work together, becoming disaffected by perhaps like what they're being made to do. Like they want to do the right thing, but since we know there's a secret government agency collecting psychical thoughts, and then you've got zealots out there who are trying to sacrifice planets to this serpent. I could see that one of them getting disaffected or tired of it all, and maybe looking for answers somewhere else. And then the question of temptation and all that. But I don't see the cops as being a main character necessarily. I see them as being adjacent to other stuff.
I'm so glad you said that because I definitely see them as like they're off in the background or like they're like a side character. Like they're important, but they're not going to be like punching walls and like helping the protagonists run through like.
Yeah, it's more like they might be afflicted in the same way the protagonist is. Like I could see one having left their force or whatever, but they kept like the god bit for whatever reason, and they get caught up in the protagonist story.
I could even see it that they're sent out for some like mundane like check on this research vessel. Like it's just some boring like the ship is passing through our space and we're getting some weird readings from it. We better go check it out. That sort of like, and it's very like
and badly,
very mundane. But yeah, it could go in different ways. I think depending on if this is an RPG or a story.
Yeah, they could go into a horror ship, of course.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think horror is the easy one to go to here, right? Like again, we kind of evoked Event Horizon earlier, and then you've also got stuff like Dead Space, like giant empty ship full of necromorphs. By the way, Daniel, one thing that I found that I think is really interesting is not retired, but forcibly retired from the space cops. Like someone who knew what it was once like to have reality warping powers, and now like their hand kind of shakes when they think about it a little bit, like that's another way that we can introduce that concept without like throwing the power scale all off as well.
I like that because you could have whatever the protagonist is doing, which I feel like if we're constructing an adventure, it should be about them. But I like the idea of perhaps along their path, they come in contact with one of these retired officers who can help them from a wisdom perspective. And maybe, is actually interested in that mission of the protagonist.
Yeah. And then the other thing that you can also do with that kind of situation is, you've been following this character and they've been like, oh, I've been retired. I haven't had my power. And then inevitably within the course of the narrative, they find a way that they can access another type of power. Like, oh, I found a thing that's similar. but it's gonna kill me, and then they have their big heroic sacrifice
Yeah, to help the
moment.
hero. Love
Yeah,
it.
and you get to see what that power actually looks like firsthand.
Mm.
And you're like, oh, fuck. Okay, I'm glad that we're not focused on this as the protagonist, because it would be a completely different type of, narrative that we're
Yeah.
focusing.
To give it like really, really mundane roots, you could also have it be this, retired or disgraced cop who's still thinking back to his glory days. He like comes across one of those psychonaut hobbyist sites and starts like reading through
Oh,
the forums and participating a little bit. And maybe he starts to
Oh,
piece together clues about this researcher who's like heavily, heavily exposed to
yes.
this stuff. And like he kind of does his own like side investigation and tries to figure out what the hell's going on and what is going on with that ship that's following this serpent.
yeah, that's really
Maybe
good.
this is how you get led to the sleeping progenitor. Like perhaps in the one who's really involved is getting like echoes of its dreams or something. The scientist who's on the
I get it.
psychonaut board. So like the cop is piecing these bits together and trying to figure out the motivations of the scientist on that ship.
Yeah, like
Mhm.
the posts of the scientists become like stranger and stranger as it goes on, and like they start talking about hearing a whisper in their mind that's calling them to a
Yes.
certain place, and like has anybody else experienced that kind of thing.
Oh, sure. Sure. Yeah. And of course it's like, oh man, I wish that I could be like that. Oh, tell me all about it. And then there's I don't know, I'm picturing this as like a shit posting forum as well, like where
Yeah.
there's plenty of shit posting involved. Yeah, where
Mhm.
it's like, yeah, lol, me too. And then I woke up and my wife was murdered or something like that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
no one believes them, to a certain
Yeah.
extent.
Is it like what's his name? QAnon? That's what we're dealing with.
Oh,
Okay, I'm glad that you
QAnon-esque.
said that, because I
Yeah.
literally was thinking like this had QAnon vibes to it, like 100%.
Or 90s like X-Files vibes, depending how you want to go with it.
I mean, they've basically bled into each other at this point, Daniel.
How dare you? How dare you?
I mean, tell me I'm wrong, because I'm not wrong.
You remember the four? No, they're fundamentally. Remember you remember the hacker guys in X-Files?
Yeah, the three
Yeah.
horsemen, right?
They were good
Yeah.
people. They're not QAnon trash. Like
No, but I'm saying that like no one can have fun like with conspiracies anymore, because it's like it all turns into like
because
QAnon.
QAnon ruined it. Yes,
Exactly. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
That's what I mean. Because conspiracies are fun,
they're
like
fun. I know.
but the problem is that now people believe them, and it's dangerous.
I just miss Evil G-Man. Like generic Evil G-Man, and we're fighting the power. That kind of thing. Why can't we do that?
Right, exactly. I sincerely wish that we could get away from blood libel and go back to good old fashioned conspiracies again.
Yeah. Anyway, but like in the vein of keeping things like mundane and simple, like we could follow that disgraced cop who comes across this forum and starts investigating, and like he joins up with maybe a younger person on that forum who isn't as like jaded to the world, and it follows more like his story there rather than directly closely following the people on the ship and the progenitor and all that.
Right.
I like that. It's more like it's not noir, but it is a detective story, which is nice.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm thinking. If I'm looking at this cinematically, right? Like the opening is the boring montage of a cop who's like going through his like what his day is now, and it's incredibly boring. And he looks back and there's like him as a superhero basically, and like he's like trying to remember what it was like. And then something happened. There is a call somewhere, right? That changes his day to day, that forces him to pay attention. And it's not just he stumbles across like a forum post, right? Because it's got to be something more impactful than that. What is the thing that like pulls him in the direction of this particular adventure?
A thought you can have is sort of matrixy. So like when Neo, when he has been spending a lot of time alone, he stumbles upon the things that lead him into the story, but there's a meta narrative of like the bunny and imagery that is occurring in real life, that are, it's kind of like Jungian, what's the word, synchronicity that he experiences in the Matrix that leads him to truth in the one good movie there was. So in our situation, since we do have reality warping magic, essentially, I could imagine this cop having had synchronistic experiences that he then tries to validate or understand through this forum,
Yeah, like maybe he even thinks that it's like how like with psychedelic use you'll sometimes get like acid flashbacks. Like maybe he views it as that and he goes onto these forums to try to see if that's what it is, and that leads him down this path.
Okay, hear me out. I like that a lot. I'm gonna try and incorporate it, but hear me out on this one, okay? Let's take that idea. Now let's put it in a kind of group therapy situation where it's just like a bunch of retired cops all together in a room, like trying to deal with it.
And like their meeting.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
Or it's like, and then like one of his cop friends, like, hey, have you tried doing this like drug? You know, it's really helped me with like kind of settling my nerves, and like, and then he takes it and something is different happens to him. And it's like, it completely alters the trajectory of where he was going.
And I could see like they all have these synchronistic kind of experiences that didn't really understand, like remnants or echoes of their service. Yeah. And so like they're coming together, you know, help share how they're coping, and which could lead to the forum. And like you're saying, maybe trying other drugs that reveals more, stuff like that.
Yeah, and maybe he witnessed something in his service that was different, and that was like that. Maybe it was the thing that forced him out of his service that like directly, fundamentally changes how he experiences this drug, this experience, right?
Yeah, like maybe he had some sort of contact with the serpent at some point.
Yeah. Like maybe they had earlier, like a late mission that went in its proximity, and he actually had to dock with it or something. Who knows? Something crazy.
Yeah, he like witnessed it directly with his own eyes, and it's like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's absolutely part of it. Another thing is maybe what we can also do is bring in the kind of, you know, Dungeons and Dragons Tomb of Annihilation, like kind of idea.
No spoilers. No spoilers. I'm playing it currently.
Oh, really?
He is. Yeah.
Okay. Wait, which version?
It's the 5e one, so no.
Okay, that's fine. I'm going to reference the 2e version, so you're good.
As long as it doesn't spoil anything.
Sure there's no spoilers?
Because I literally need to
I haven't
not
read
know
the
anything.
5th edition one, but
you know what happens in the 2nd edition one, though, right?
Yeah.
I don't know anything, and it will ruin my entire campaign if I know anything.
Okay. Let me try and recontextualize. Okay. It was really just a matter of, okay, let's go back and look at the tomb of this progenitor, right? Yeah. And use that as like, maybe we can experience that through flashback, right?
Right.
Because then you get into all this history that we've kind of been talking about with the progenitor race, with the schism that happened between them. And, you know, like all of this has been scrubbed from his mind, or maybe it was like forced down in like a trauma response once he saw the world serpent. But like all of this stuff that we've been talking about has been crammed into this very boring man. And together with his very boring internet forum friends, they start to uncover this mystery, right? Because that's, I think, what we have to do is we have to take something that is so fantastical and we have to uncover it. We have to like expose people to it. And I think this is an interesting way of doing it, is by like doing it through the lens of this retired cop, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry to spook you for spoilers there, Daniel.
I know, because like my GM would be so sad.
Yeah. All right, so I've memorized the map, and in section M32, you're going to want to click on the button on the left-hand side. There's like a dial. Click that, but just trust me on that one, okay?
For those who have played it, we have made friends with the big dinosaur that's supposed to be terrible and fearsome. He's our buddy now in this game.
Oh, that's great.
I assume made friends because of your character.
Actually, I helped with a spell, but it was technically our yokel gnome who did the actual work. But I did facilitate communicating with the dinosaur.
I'm so interested in this. Okay. Yeah. I feel like we've come to a point where like the main storyline quest, we've done it. We've knocked it out, right? At this point. Is there anything else that we need to explore a little bit more?
Like one thing that we didn't really touch on at all, I think just because it became so integral to how this happened, was the tenet about stuff coming from the gods, like gut flora in particular, but I'm not sure if there's a way to tie that in fully.
Well, I mean, I think you nailed it on the head there, Courtney. It's integral to like so much of the world that it's like it kind of doesn't need to be talked about. Like the fact that the sentient races that exist are currently like progeny of gut flora and fauna from these dead gods' bodies, and the fact that the magic also comes from, or the quote unquote magic comes from the flora and fauna of the dead gods is also, I think, part of it, you know?
Yeah.
We speak to like the more when you approach kind of like in No Man's Sky, what it ultimately did, the closer you get to weird stuff that has like the real working physics, the weirder things get. So I can see like stranger fauna and flora being generated by things the snake has passed through. So for example, you're trying to track the snake, you could find solar systems that are completely warped with strange life forms that have developed from, you know, wildlife, developed from its passing. And that could be part of the effects of its field, you know.
I can also see like maybe the drug itself is kind of like it's like a cultivated flora and or fauna from the gods as well.
It's like a probiotic. Like
exactly.
a god probiotic.
Exactly. Yeah. Look, you got to stay regular, and that's how you do it. It's through God stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I could also see that being another mundane thing, like when the researchers end up, you know, coming across this progenitor and like, you know, tell us all your secrets. How were we formed? Like, you created us, kind of thing. And he's like, you guys actually just evolved from like god poop. So
yeah,
there's nothing really special about it.
Effectively, yes. That's what I was thinking. You know, where it's just like, yeah, no, you were completely incidental. You were the literal shit on our boot. You know, like,
yeah.
I think that's an interesting way of approaching it. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I feel like this setting has been remarkably fun to work through for a bunch of reasons.
Agreed. Yeah, I love how it turned out.
Yeah,
it's a weird one.
It is a weird one. I like weird ones, Daniel. That's why we're friends.
Yep.
All right. So I feel like now is a good place to call it. And that's going to do it for this episode of World Build with us. A huge, huge thank you to our patron, Commissar Whiskers, for effectively spearheading this particular prompt. If you want us to build your world and you'd like 2 episodes to do so, you can always become our patron over on Patreon. If you don't want to do that, you don't need to, of course. You can always just go to our website, worldbuildwithus.com, where you can click the link, follow the instructions, and within a reasonable amount of time, we'll be building your world. If you want to follow us on social media, we're over on Twitter at Let's World Build. Or if you want to come talk to us more directly, come chat with us on Discord. If you are sick of listening to us on your regular devices, guess what? We're on YouTube now. So if you want to go and subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff, you can do that now. So please do so if you're inclined, right? Again, big shout out to Commissar Whiskers and all of our other patrons who contributed to this particular prompt. That's going to do it for this episode of World Build with us. Remember that we love you very much, and we're going to get through this together. Until next week.